The Wolfenstein series at one point was famous for being one of the first popular first person shooters. Developed by ID Software, who later went on to make Doom, Wolfenstein 3D was a smash hit. Its sequels were also seen as good, and both Return to Castle Wolfenstein and the 2009 Wolfenstein game that fell into obscurity have fans. And then, well, there was the reboot called Wolfenstein The New Order. I was in a minority saying it sucked, but the thing is, it just wasn't a very good game. Its difficulty was inconsistent, it was an overrated corridor shooter, and its writing relied too much on shock value. So I wasn't too excited for the sequel either. After all, chances are it's more the same thing the New Order was, but then there was a great big controversy, and one that has more to do with the political climate right now than the game itself. Though it does have a bit to do with the game itself, as you'll see later. See, it seems like Wolfenstein II came out at the absolute worst possible time. So lately, there's been a whole movement in Western culture that's being pushed on people that goes by many different names. Cultural Marxism, the culture war, social justice, whatever you want to call it this week, has dominated the political and cultural landscape. And anyhow, lots of people oppose the media narrative for anything, and who are even remotely sick of it, and who even remotely lean right, have been branded by Nazis. And quite frankly, people are sick of being called Nazis for every little thing. Furthermore, Wolfenstein's Twitter account seemed to make tweets that read as if they handed the account to some snowflake with hair dye, hashtag resist in their Twitter bio, and no use of the shift key whatsoever, with tweets about punching Nazis and make America Nazi free again. You know, the same kind of stuff that some snowflake and Daddy's Benz would tweet about with their new iPhone X, or that some brainwashed useful idiot who knows absolutely nothing about politics would tweet about because their neighbor with the Trump sticker is secretly a Nazi somehow because he makes dog whistling signs all the time. Now, maybe 5 years ago, that wouldn't have been an issue, but when an entire generation raised on soy, bottled water, unrestricted internet access on their smartphone, and of course, gaming blogs going into how bad Trump is, and when they go and see these, it activates their almonds. It fires up all their neurons as they go on Twitter and say, ha ha ha, Nazis get owned, ha ha ha, we punch Nazis. I don't care if I've got spaghetti arms, I'm gonna punch some Nazis. And I'm gonna beat the shit out of them by pushing buttons on my Razer keyboard. And then they screech at anyone who doesn't want politics in their video game, and they all call them bigots, and they say, oh, you're making a political statement, you're secretly a Nazi because you don't want your video games turning into political rants. It's 2017. It's 20 motherfucking 17. And if you don't want that, you're a goddamn bigot. Please buy Tacoma or Gone Home or all those other games. And Wolfenstein 2, of course, because it has Nazi punching in it. This is made worse by two major factors. The first major factor is that journalists are trying to market this game with the same kind of shame marketing they use to market games like Mass Effect Andromeda and movies like the Ghostbusters remake. They're telling you that Wolfenstein 2 is this woke commentary on the Nazis in this amazing game where you get to shoot Nazis. If you don't buy this game, you're a Nazi bigot who has Confederate flags, shoots up churches, carries tiki torches, doesn't want people tearing down statues, and runs over people with your Dodge Charger. Buy the game, you fucking bigot. What are you, a Nazi? Don't tell me that you're a fucking Nazi sympathizer. I bet you fucking go to Breitbart.com, that racist website, you piece of shit. If anything, though, this raises two distinct possibilities. Either the marketing team is run by snowflakes who straight out of college who go on their Tumblr bios and bitch and moan when their employer isn't progressive enough letting them wear 20 hair dye colors, or the marketing team's geniuses for pulling the strings of the gaming media in public, deliberately provoking the gaming market in an attempt to create a more organic version of the infamous EA protesters marketing stunt, where EA paid fake protesters to protest their video game Dante's Inferno years ago. The second factor is the game has the same kind of shock value style writing that Wolfenstein the New Order did. In older Wolfenstein titles, you're unloading on Nazis because they were the enemies in World War II, and the game takes place during World War II. In the older titles, you were also a soldier not just fighting any bunch of random Nazis, but specifically Nazis trying to use a secret weapon to win the war. And your goal is to stop them and their plans and turn the tide of the war to help the Allies win. Think of it like the Indiana Jones films, except instead of being an explorer, you're a soldier with testosterone pumping through their veins, gunning out Nazis with a badass machine gun. And that's basically what you were. They also took place during a war as well, instead of some full on alternate history setting where the Allies lost and the Axis took over. In Wolfenstein the New Order, though, along with this game, you're reminded every single minute that Nazis are evil, they killed millions, and they're brutal like that random dictatorship you saw in another video game, or like, say, Half-Life 2, or many other games that have the same type of story as one guy fighting against a dictatorship as a one-man army. I've seen that in multiple games before. It's not new at all. While the New Order and this game might have relied on shock value with, hey, look, the Nazis have taken over the USA now, and they're brutal murderers specifically towards you, it might have just stayed there as iffy writing, easily overlookable to an extent if you could just skip the damn cutscenes. Cutscenes that I couldn't skip from what I can recall in the New Order, and it's the same shit with many of the cutscenes in Wolfenstein 2. So, let's talk about the game now, and let's see what this game is like. So, Wolfenstein II is a first-person shooter developed by Machine Games, who's located in Sweden. The first things you see are that you choose who to sacrifice when you start the game to play a specific timeline, which is a choice the first game had you make, and you actually end up seeing this in your flashback scene. And then the game starts you off with a long, drawn-out series of unskippable cutscenes that last for several minutes. You're critically ill, and during this time, you see a very unrelated flashback that the game makes you sit through to your parents in a domestic dispute. It's almost like a parody of AAA games. Here, watch your parents fight or some shit. Look at this emotional plot, everybody. Your dad's a bitch. Be sure to press F to pay respects. Also, you find out your dad hates Jews and blacks, and your mom is Jewish. Wow, how convenient. I sure remember that scene from Wolfenstein 3D that dragged on and felt like it was written by a preachy Tumblr poster with daddy issues in all lowercase and ugly bright font colors and a neon colored talking animal icon, whining about how their dad's a bitch for not letting them go to Anthrocon. Oh, and spoiler alert, you get to kill your dad later on in the game. Take that, Dad, for not buying me an Xbox One X. Meanwhile, the Doom reboot that came out last year didn't fuck around or play games. You broke out of the hospital bed you were in to shoot some motherfucking demons. Your main character even punches a speaker trying to lecture the story to you. Because guess what? It's fucking Doom, and who the fuck cares about your parents and your daddy issues? You just wanted to shoot some motherfucking demons. Imagine if the new Doom had a 10-minute sequence about Doom Guy's dad. Guess what? It would have gotten a shitty score by gamers, that is. And the older Wolfenstein games were the same way. Because guess what? In Doom you want to shoot some fucking demons. In Wolfenstein you want to shoot some Nazis. You'd put a cartridge in your game console or type in command, hit the button to start the game or press enter, and you'd shoot some fucking Nazis before destroying Mega Hitler at the end. No unskippable press E to pay respect style cutscenes, just some good old motherfucking shooting action. High octane shooting action that's fun as hell to play.
These in-game cutscenes can drag on for 5 to 10 minutes with nothing happening whatsoever. By the time I got to the parts where I could fire a fucking gun, I was bored out of my mind. Nothing interesting was going on. I don't want this dumbass story, I just want some fun-ass gameplay. Now, who knows why they did this? Maybe they did this to pad out the game. But either way, the game drags out like this the entire game. A long, long sequence of cutscenes with a story I couldn't give a rat's ass about and a bit of shooting here or there. That's what the game's like, people. Go look up a Let's Play if you don't believe me, because that's what the game's like. Now, sure, I could rant all day about historical inaccuracies in the game and whatnot, or about agenda pushing, but there's two things that should be pointed out. The first thing is it's clearly a work of fiction, and any agendas can easily be hidden behind the same sort of excuse Jon Stewart used on his news talk parody show, whatever you want to call it, when called out on his style or editing interviews. He'd always say, "It's just comedy." I'll leave the process of over-analyzing any secret hidden subtones in this disposable piece of garbage to someone else considering the subject matter of the game, but I will say this. The media who wants everything to be political absolutely loves this game and can't stop gushing over it, while they bitch and moan at Cuphead because they can't get past the fucking tutorial. The second thing is, Wolfenstein has far bigger problems than that. Its story is just a drag of bullshit nobody fucking cares about. No, I don't care about the protagonist's family issues. I just want to be able to shoot something. I don't want preachy lectures about race and shit or long drawn out story sequences played 100% straight. I just want to shoot some damn Nazis or whatever. I just want to shoot something. I just want to shoot something. And while someone can deflect criticism of the poorly written story with, "Oh, but you always shoot Nazis," thing is, there was more to it than that. There weren't unskippable preachy cutscenes. Instead, you were trying to turn the tide of war and stop the Nazis. You were exploring mazes for secrets, not shooting in a corridor and camping out in a specific fighting area part of the map where all the action goes on as you run from corridor to corridor or vent to vent. But here's the thing. With all the controversy surrounding this game, with the game being unable to be talked about without politics coming into play somehow, with discussion on certain controlled websites such as the V Board being shut down because it went against the media narrative, with all this stuff going on, we haven't addressed the biggest thing with this game yet, the gameplay. So let's talk about it now. The game plays a mix between Wolfenstein the New Order and numerous bargain bin Call of Duty clones that littered the 360 and brought nothing new to the table except for cluttering up GameStop used bins. You run through corridors, sometimes crouching to walk through vents, and the stealth mechanic from the New Order returns, feeling like an inferior version of Halo's AI, where you sneak up on the enemy and take out the leader. You aim down the sights and you shoot some Nazis who are reduced to generic video game dictatorship soldiers. You sometimes get confused because the game doesn't give you obvious ways all the time of how to pass things, but thankfully that's why Game FAQs exists. That's it. It brings literally nothing new to the table. Strip out the cutscenes and writing that feels like it was written by a Polygon writer, and you're left with just another example on why modern AAA games absolutely fucking suck. They're making inferior versions of the same games you could play on the 360 while missing the point on why those games were a success. What you see in this gameplay footage is exactly what you fucking get. Another overpriced 5 hour or similar length corridor shooter where you shoot some Nazis or enemies, you watch some cutscenes, that's it. That's what you get. Now, technically, this game is powered by the ID Tech 6 engine that the new Doom runs on. This means that the game has a console key and a setting that displays a MSI Afterburner style frame rate display while you game that you can turn on. It also makes use of AMD's Vulkan API, or well, Vulkan in general. It's not just AMD, but I kind of associate it with it. Despite this, the game's graphics are a very mixed bag. Sometimes the game has decent lighting effects, but other times it has that clay person Unreal Engine 3 style look, the same one Bioshock Infinite had at times. At least the game is well optimized on PC, and I was able to max this game out on my 8 GB RX 480 with AMD 8350 CPU, overclocked. A recurring issue with ID Tech 5 and to an extent ID Tech 6 titles is that the textures don't look so great either. I've seen 360 titles with better looking textures, and yes, that includes even Call of Duty. So is Wolfenstein II worth its value? Well, the game features long-ass cutscenes, a short single player, and no multiplayer for $60. After all, according to the developers who made this game, a multiplayer would dilute the deep and engaging cutscene fest or press F to pay respects level storyline, and reviewers would hate being called bad words online anyhow. I mean, they already screech enough about multiplayer games and being called bad words in them, so yeah. All in all, Wolfenstein 2 is yet another reason why AAA gaming is dying a slow and painful death. There's nothing memorable about this game, except for the fact that it's why you don't market your game to a demographic of people who spend less time gaming and more time in front of their computer on social media, saying anyone who doesn't play your game is a bigot, as the soylent rots their brains away. Even if they play this game, they'll beat it in a few hours and go back to playing Destiny 2 and Overwatch and whatever the hot new PC game is this week. Just like most modern AAA games, it's essentially a disposable game. And while the fact that single player means it'll last longer past its expiration date than, say, a multiplayer game, which eventually gets shut down with cease and desist letters being sent to anyone who dares try to bring it back, as was the case the other day with Battlefield 2, it'll be forgotten about quickly, because it's just not a very good game. And that's all that needs to be said. It's just another piece of disposable AAA garbage that's going to get forgotten about in a few days. And that's all that needs to be said, gamers. Thanks for watching, and subscribe for more gaming stuff.
Hey yo, I got a little story about a dude like me. I love cooking french fries that you all might eat. I make them nice and hot and guaranteed to please. When everybody strolls up inside my Wendy's, you can have them as a side or even